Okay, we are live right now. Let me send out a link and let people know, and then we will get started chatting away, good sir. There we go. There goes the tweet. There goes the second tweet in the Discord. All right. Hello, knuckleheads. It's Jaffe. How you doing? I'm here with Mo Wagner, the famous rapper who takes inspiration from Mozart and puts it into sort of phrasing and beats that the youth of today can appreciate. Mo, when you first started rapping, were you really getting into the violence part of the East Coast, West Coast sort of nostalgia of back in the day, or were you like, fuck it, no, I'm bringing my own heat?
It's more about competition for me. I enjoy the competition.
Do you
rap.
freestyle, or is it like, no, man, I need my notebook, I need to go somewhere and just sort of really work it out, or can you just
I
riff?
suck at freestyling. I can't do it.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, I got to tell you something. Besides being a great rapper, you are, I don't even know if you're up and coming. Are you drinking? Are you drinking alcohol on the job? I have pot. We'll do pot and alcohol. Here we go. Where are you right now? You're in Germany?
I'm in Germany. It's late in the evening. It's 7 p.m.
Is pot legal? Is pot legal where you are?
No, it's not.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, so I don't know how old you are. It's none of my business, but somebody, when I tweeted out your picture, says, is this fucking guy 18? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I don't think he's 18. But they were surprised because they were like, this guy's the head of design at Mimimi. Do you guys call yourself Me3? Is that what you guys...
No, me, actually.
Me. Okay.
And I look young, I know, but I'm older than I look.
Well, how long have you been in the business? The reason I ask is because I know people, you're coming to people's attention now, but I know you worked before on Shadow Tactics. You've been with Mimimi for a while, correct?
Yeah, I've been with Mimimi since the beginning, and we exist for, we've been studying together game design before making the company, so it's about 10 years now.
Okay. Okay, so, but...
Or 11.
You guys started with mobile, and then you did this kind of platformy thing, which I haven't played, but you were the designer on that as well, correct?
Yeah, one of the designers. We, three of us who were in the company from the beginning always did the designs together, basically, and we're still doing it that way. And yeah, that was the first game. We actually did that during university. It was called The Last Tinker.
Yeah.
And it was our university project, and it was actually the reason why we founded the company. The mobile stuff then was just... Well, there was one game that was not work for hire, but the other stuff was worked for hire to just exist.
Gotcha.
And then we got a publishing deal for Tinker and made that. And after that, we switched to something completely different.
Right. Well, this is what I was going to ask, because it's if you go to your website now, you guys are working on this thing, codename, I think you call it Sweet Potato in English. That game is also a real-time tactics strategy game, what have you. So was that always the goal, or... Shadow Tactics comes after Last Tinker and you're like, fuck it, we found our niche? Or is it just like whatever floats your boat, game to game to game, and maybe you guys will be doing an FPS after Sweet Potato?
Well, it started out with us wanting to do what we wanted to do, and the plan was never to do Shadow Tactics, though it was an idea we had during our studies already, because we were fans of Commandos, basically,
right.
Especially our creative director, Dom. And the fun thing is that I actually did rap, and during university I did some ninja rap stuff, which was weird.
You did ninja rap stuff. What does that mean?
I was rapping like battle rap.
You were actually battle rapping?
Yeah.
With
online. It wasn't really in person, getting into your face kind of stuff.
Okay, well, let's hear a little bit.
I can't, no.
Why?
I get so how do you call it? I am a confident guy usually, but when it comes to this, I'm not. I just can't do it.
When you're out at bars and you're trying to pick someone up, do you just go up to them and start rapping? Is that how it works?
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. Okay, fair enough.
No.
Do you go up and just say, "Hey, Desperados, motherfucker, that was me"?
That's more my thing.
Right. I mean, that's
they
really...
always know it.
Well, listen, I mean, it is... I'm going to be all over the board today, but I adored Desperados 3. It's one of my favorite games, even though I know it came out kind of, I think it's a year anniversary now. It was late summer last year, but I didn't come to it until it came to Game Pass, which we will talk about. But it's on my top 10 list, not for whatever that's fucking worth, but it's on my top 10 list. One of my favorite games I've played in many, many years. And I was really interested in it because I played Shadow Tactics a little bit, and here let me just get. We're going to go all over, but we're going to get a little deep with design because that's kind of what I did for a long time. But so Shadow Tactics I liked. I loved what it was about. I grew up with Commandos. I loved Commandos 1. I grew up with Jagged Alliance, which was sort of the precursor to Commandos, which I loved. But Shadow Tactics was really cool, and I played it for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I was okay. I was good. I didn't feel the need to play anymore. And then Desperados comes along, and I was kind of tangentially aware of it. Because I just saw it on Steam and screenshots. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Maybe I'll get around to that. And then it's on Game Pass. I'm like, fuck it, it's Game Pass. I'll try it. And I was addicted. I played it. I rarely finish games at all. I finished it like, I played nothing else for like a week, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I just did a keynote for Digital Dragons, which is this convention they do in Poland for video games. And one of the centerpieces was about video game design and storytelling, and there's a bunch of Desperados 3 stuff in there, right? So, and I'll send you the link to it. But it was fascinating to me because here I am going from Shadow Tactics, which was really good, and I love the theme. I probably love the theme of ninjas and samurai more than cowboys. But suddenly I'm like, holy cow, this one, like, absolutely cracked it. I mean, and I want to ask about the specifics, but at a meta level, did you guys feel like you made sort of the most user-friendly, welcoming genre type of game in Desperados 3? Because I would have to imagine for this genre, this was a big hit for you guys.
Yeah, so I would it's very interesting that for you it was this way, because usually for many people it's the other way around. Like, they prefer Shadow Tactics, actually, which I think has a lot to do with
the theme. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we're, it's the same for me. I like the ninja theme more than the Western cowboy thing.
Okay.
But I agree that I think it shows that we've done the same thing before, and then we could do it again, and we could iterate on the stuff that we felt didn't quite, maybe, like, there's a lot of UX stuff, right? You're clicking through stuff and these sort of things that we improved a lot. And that, I think, does a lot, yeah. I think it's still not that user-friendly. Like, these games are rather hard to get into, so it's something we're still working on to kind of maybe put more onto that. But yeah, I think we realized that it was a step up from Shadow Tactics in this regard.
Well, there was like a quality of life thing that just went off the charts. Like, for me, like, even something as simple as like the fast forward button, which when I went back to play Shadow Tactics, because I was like jonesing for more Mimimi stuff, and I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll love it now. And I was like, oh, there's no fucking F button. Where's my F button? You know, something as simple as that is that I think one of the reasons tactical games, real-time tactical games, maybe turn certain people off in more of a mainstream mentality is it just like you find yourself waiting a lot. So suddenly you guys are like, fuck it, we're putting in a button to kind of fast forward time. And that alone made such a difference. What was the thought behind that? And like, why hasn't anyone done that before?
So it's rather funny because, I mean, we have this as a dev cheats in Shadow Tactics. Like, we can speed the game any way we want at all time. And we always do it when we're playing because we don't want to wait if you want to test something. Right. Like, we don't do it if you really test the level, because then we're not having the user experience, but we use it all the time. And I think during Shadow Tactics, there were many things, this one or also the pause thing, that the Shadow Tactics, you cannot pause the game. Right. And Desperados you can, which is, I think, one of the biggest things that makes it more user-friendly. We also had that in the game during Shadow Tactics, and what we realized, we were kind of afraid that it breaks immersion too much. Like, we weren't sure in what way you experience the game. Since it's a tactical puzzle style game, so people are rather detached on certain levels, and they're with things. And we weren't confident enough in this aspect yet that we could say, okay, if you speed up time, it doesn't break. Like, it's still a cool game. And then we made Desperados, and we realized, okay, this is something we can do. Like, people look at it in this mechanical way a lot because it's that type of game. So it's fine for them to speed up time. It's just a convenience feature. They don't think the world breaks because they do that.
So you got... Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, that's the reason why I think we didn't do it during Shadow Tactics, though maybe it never even came up.
So, but you guys were thinking that there might be a player mentality playing Shadow Tactics that literally felt immersed in the fantasy of it. Like, I mean, that, because I'm that's very surprising for me to hear, because in a game like this, like you said, it feels almost immediately like you're playing like a Warhammer kind of hex game. And anybody who actually thinks, I imagine that would be the minority that thinks that they're actually playing like, oh, I feel like I'm really Cooper and I feel like I'm really Kate. It's like, well, they're Monopoly pieces, right? But okay, so that makes sense. And
that was the thought.
Okay, well, I'm glad you did it. And I can you look at the, it's funny because you're saying people like Shadow Tactics more probably because of the theme. I think, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong here, that because I think Desperados is such a better game, even though Shadow Tactics is great, Desperados 3 I think is destined to be a classic of this genre. Did it sell better or not really? Like, I mean, which one performed better?
Well, I'm not perfectly in the info and with the numbers, but I think that standing now, I think Shadow Tactics did better overall.
Holy shit, man!
I mean, Shadow Tactics is out so long, so it's hard.
That's true.
For me to.
That's true.
You know, it's been 5 years now for Shadow Tactics, so the numbers are very different there.
You guys have a standalone coming out for Shadow Tactics, which is it? How do you say her name?
Aiko.
Aiko. Oh, okay. Will that include any of the sort of, changes that you guys have found worked better in Desperados, or you're going to go back to the older, like, pause mechanism, which really was more slow time and there's no fast forward? And what's the changes in terms of interface?
Sadly, there's not going to be anything in that regard because it's just the old engine. Like, the reason we did Aiko's Choice was that we always wanted to do something with Shadow Tactics, but it just didn't work out. And then we were between projects, and it was like, we're a one project company. Like, we don't do multiple projects.
Right.
And there was this period where certain people, like level designers and artists, they couldn't work on the new project yet because we were still defining stuff. So the idea was, okay, maybe we can use this almost half a year thing to let them do a Shadow Tactics standalone. But the baseline always was basically we don't get any coders. Like, there's no development team on that. Right. And that meant we couldn't do anything like that. We couldn't just port it over because it's a different Unity version. So we couldn't say, it's easy to do.
Gotcha.
We would have to redo it. So sadly, none of that stuff is in there, which is, I mean, everybody's sad about that. But you do get used to it again. You feel that it's a lot more clunky. I mean, I haven't played this in a while, and now I have a lot because of the DLC, and I'm like, oh.
Right. Even the button that you guys have in Desperados to sort of place the eye point.
That exists, but you can't.
It's a different button though, I think, or it's a different interface or something.
And you can't stick it to a guard.
Right. Iteration is so. Okay, so we got to talk about iteration. Let me let the chat know, by the way. If you want to talk to Mo, send me a chat or get on the Discord. He will talk to you live. Most of those will come at the end, but just letting you know, somebody's asking, this is live. We do have mods. We will ban the fuck out of you if you're spamming. One of you guys are spamming, which is fine. I love banning people. It's a lot of fun for me. Gets me off, so just keep it up, bitch. All right, so, and also Mo is a West Coast rapper. He will fucking shoot you in the head, okay? So, iteration. So anybody who's worked in games knows that iteration is absolutely everything. And maybe this genre is no different than any other, but this genre to me seems, maybe it's just because it is removed and it feels like it's sort of the mechanics are laid bare, whereas a lot of other games can hide behind their production value or their point of view of like, oh, I'm living in the world. That's enough to sustain a player for 30 or 40 minutes of interest, even though nothing's happening. But in this game, it's so easy to see. I watched an interview with you the other day, and I heard you talking about just, everything from, like, in Shadow Tactics, Muggin, who's the big samurai guy, and how it's like, well, he makes noise when he runs, right? Or whereas this character doesn't, or this character does this, or what have you. To me, I would imagine the ripple effects in a game like this, when you iterate, are more than a normal video game that you're designing. Like, you guys were talking about Isabelle in Desperados, who's an amazing character who has some of the coolest abilities. And I saw you in this interview saying that she didn't come into play until late in the process. And I'm going, how the fuck are you I mean, it's not just like, that's not just dropping a pebble into a lake and seeing the ripple effects that you can't perceive before you drop you dropped a boulder, right? I mean, how is the team just built to pivot that easily, or were they like, Mo, you motherfucker, are you out of your mind? You want to put a character that can control other characters and link characters together? I mean, how does your iteration work on a game that is so mechanics based?
So we try to get, like, the characters are something that we try to get right early on, of course. And we started early on with Isabelle as well. She just didn't come together until so late because it was hard to get her right. So it was constant iteration on her. And like the thing we started out with for her was mind control. Like, we had a prototype in Shadow Tactics for a mind control character, like, or afterwards at least. We thought, this is so cool, just running around as a guard, and we were like, okay, this is awesome, and we need to get it in. And we tried.
When you say early, what early was that? Like,
alpha in D3.
Okay.
There was no real pre-production, but during what someone would call pre-production, I guess. Yeah. So really early, and we had it like, this is something that's good for us, of course, doing the same game, and we could just prototype everything in Shadow Tactics with Shadow Tactics characters, run around in that mission. We don't have to build a new mission, all that. And just try it out. And running around with the guard instantly clicked for everyone. We were like, okay, this is so cool, because it sort of puts this dimension on that, something you always wanted to do in a game like this, because these guards are so annoying. And So we did that, and then we tried to make it work, basically, for a year or something. And we never managed to. Like, the mind control is just overpowered. Like, if it has the vision that you want it to have, and that is basically if you kill someone with a mind-controlled guard, it should never sound the alarm. Because this is not... If you're the guard and they shoot each other, it shouldn't sound the alarm. Then it's not a cool vision. And we had this... Like, we tried it with alarm, and it just didn't feel good. And then if that doesn't happen, it's OP. Because it's basically a sniping skill without alarm. So if you can do it all the time, you just break the game.
If you haven't played the game, I don't mean to interrupt, but just so if you're watching, because somebody in the chat is literally going, you know, is Desperados any good? If you haven't played Desperados, it's fucking great. It's classic, okay? Desperados 3. But what Mo's talking about is a mechanic where you have one of the characters that can literally... she's got like a bunch of sort of voodoo backstory, right? And she can shoot this dart into a bad guy. And from there... she takes over she is him for however long or however distance you get. So you can go off and control that character, and that character can go shoot another guard. And I think the thing is, you guys have it that if someone sees that happening, they'll kill him dead, right? And you're saying that before you added that, it was just too OP.
No, it was actually, even if they, like, the main thing was that if they see this, and they sound the alarm because they think something bad is happening, and we have guards spawning and all these things in stealth games that happen. It just doesn't feel like a mind control. Like, the mind control should be a sort of stealthy skill. It should be like, what did Joe just do? You know, like, what? And then you don't sound the alarm because you think your friend went crazy, probably. And this is sort of
okay. I see. So they will kill him, but there's no alarm that gets sounded, is what you're saying. I understand.
Which makes it very overpowered, because you kill two guys and don't sound the alarm, and you can do it if everybody's watching. It just breaks the whole stealth game thing.
So how do you iterate on something like that? I mean, how does that ever get solved?
We started with different things, like adding in, what is if they sound the alarm? What if we try to balance it in a way that performing the kill is harder? Like, there's this delay, you know, where he's struggling when he's putting up the gun. We balance it out with that kind of stuff. And a lot of things, but it just never worked. And then at some point we were like, okay, we cannot make this her main skill. It has to be, now in the game it has ammo, right? Or something we tried was, this is something that's still in the game just for flavor reasons. We tried, like, if it's sort of blood magic, she hurts herself, she loses a hit point.
Okay, so it used to be infinite.
It used to be infinite, exactly. Because
I got it.
The core skill for a character, we always wanted to be infinite, because we want you to use it all the time.
Right.
The defining skill. And that was her defining skill in the beginning.
And
then realized, okay, we can't do it. And so we did what we usually do with these kind of skills. We slapped ammo on it, and it was fine if it's overpowered.
Right.
Your get out of jail free card 3 times in a level.
Right.
You want. And then we needed something new as a core skill for her. And then the Connect came in because we all love Arcane Studios and Dishonored, and they had that in Dishonored too. And we were like, well,
it works there. Right. Yeah. And the coolest thing is in that one, what she can do is she can connect two living entities together. Usually it's a guard and a guard. Sometimes it's a guard and a chicken or a guard and a horse or whatever the fuck. As long as it's breathing, right, you can do it, right? And the coolest thing is the first time you see it happen is she'll connect a guard with a guard, and then she'll go up to, because she's still controlling her own body, and she goes up to the guard, one of the guards that's connected, and slits their throat. And the other guard, it's like a ghost is doing the same thing. You see the blood come out of his neck and everything, and it's superb. It is awesome. But yeah, I mean, so does the team just know at this point, look, fellas, you know, and ladies, dig in, because we're going to be changing this up until post-alpha, because that's the nature of game development in general, and specifically, this is a game that, like, you're adding almost like wind-up toys into a map, and you don't know how it's going to affect everything. I mean, is that just sort of in the DNA of how you guys work together, or does it create a lot of friction?
It can create friction, but it's always fine, because the core team has been working together for almost 10 years now. So we're a company where few people leave. So it's we know each other very well, and we communicate a lot. So it's not like people see the game and they play the character and they realize the problems if you tell them about them. And they're like, okay, yeah, we got to fix this. And to be fair, the Connect thing, we could then very early on decide like how powerful this is going to be and what it's going to do. And the basic trick that we just had to do is just add one guard more into every setup where she's part of. It's rather simple.
And that was all, interesting.
Yeah, she just allows you to kill two guys at the same time. So if there's always, it's the same with Kate or Aiko in the old games,
right?
Who could always distract one guard. So she's a character that can she can disguise herself, she can walk up to an enemy and she can talk to them. And that lets you basically determine the way they look, just as an explanation.
Right. Okay, so...
Yeah, so you just add one more guard. It's easier than done, but, and then the setup's fixed.
When you are designing, because I will tell you that's good the team was comfortable with it, because I mean, for me, they would always say, the programmers would always get mad at me, and I want to talk about how you and I are such different designers, and how you're a much better, like anybody watching, and a lot of people who watch these things are like, oh, I want to be a designer, I want to go into games. Watch Mo, don't watch Jaffe, okay? Because if the goal is design, okay? Because what would happen a lot of times is I would be so idea based or conceptual based that the programmers would get mad at me 3 months in, going, "Why didn't you think it all through?" And I'm like, because the idea was so fucking cool, I figured we just deal with it. And 90% of the time, we just deal with it. And it's like they hate me for it, but I'm like, we're blowing up the Eiffel Tower, motherfucker. I don't care. We'll you know, we don't need a plan B. It distracts from plan A, you know? So, but in your case, I you know, listening to you talk about design on previous interviews, you seem very assured with your perception of mechanics and systems and how they all fit together. I mean, is that what's drawn you to design? Like for me, it was the ideas and the themes and the ability to create these cool worlds. But when I hear you talk about design, it really feels more like you're coming at it from a very, like, you know, foundational, almost DNA of where the player's head goes when they're thinking about gameplay, or when they're not even thinking about it when they're experiencing gameplay. I mean, would that be a fair assumption of sort of where you think your skill set is?
I wish, but I don't think it's completely true. Like, I think I'm okay at this, but I'm also someone who gets carried away by ideas. The good thing that we have always had in place, and I think this is also why, is that we have, as I mentioned, there's 3 of us who do the design.
Yeah.
And it has always been the case that we've been basically designing everything together. Like, I might usually prepare something. If it's a more complex thing, I might be working on it all the time, and then I will show them and we'll talk about it a lot. And during that, like, we're very different characters when it comes to these things. Like, one of them is Hambo, the head writer. So he's also looking very narratively on things. He has a very different view on things. Right. And then we have Dom, the creative director. And he's also a programmer, or he used to be, so he's not anymore. So we have these different kind of skill sets in there, and when we talk these things over, we usually already get to like reduce them. And if I have one of these, I have these all the time, where I have this idea, this is gonna be so awesome, and I go there, and then they're not hyped as I am, and they're like, yeah, but what about this? And then I'm pissed, and then it takes a couple of iterations to get it right. So this helps a lot, I think.
Okay. So, when you're doing a map, right, it's like, what comes first? Like, one of the things I loved about this game, and again, the fact that I finished this game is rare, because I play so many games. I play almost everything. And you mentioned Arcane. I don't know if you were playing Deathloop yet, which is...
I am.
Is what do you think of that?
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to say how much I like it yet, because I think it's a game that you need to get to the end to actually say.
I think that's true.
I
think that's true. Yeah, I'm playing it as well, and I think that's one I'll finish, just because it's so compelling of like, where's this going? But okay, so when you're designing a game like this, and like I said, this was compelling enough that I somehow finished it. One of the things was like, it felt that every level or every mission or whatever you guys called them really did consciously was bringing me something fresh. And so many games fall into this. I don't know if it's a mistake or just I don't know why they do it, where it's so clearly padding. And this was like, nope, this is the level where you blow up the bridge. Nope, this is the level where, you do this, you do that. I'm assuming that A, was conscious, was it? And B, was there a meta structure where you were like, okay, now I want this kind of mission that flows into this kind of mission and this kind of pace? I mean, can you just talk a little bit about sort of the meta of how you link the levels and what the philosophy was? Because for whatever reason, it was like one trapeze after the other for me that kept me swinging until I got across the Grand Canyon. I was like, fuck, I made it. I just got on board, I let go and die. So what was that about?
So that is a big part of, I think, why the games are successful, is that we probably got a little lucky there during Shadow Tactics already. Like, something that we did is that we are aware, and this is something that Commandos did as well, I think. It was just every map was different and awesome in a way, especially Commandos 2. Like, Commandos 2 is just ridiculous. These maps, they're ridiculous. Yeah. And so we realized that this is very important. And then we made this pacing excellent. It's very simple. It's just, these are the levels, and these are the characters you have in the levels. And then I sort of started pacing this out. So this is one of the most important factors, is which characters are available. Mm-hmm. If we give you the same combinations all the time, it gets stale, because you just do the same thing.
Right.
But it forces you to think on your toes. Suddenly you lose Cooper, maybe, who's this all-round guy, and then he's not in a mission. Like, wait, what am I going to do without the throwing knife?
Right,
and then you have
to
figure out how Doc McCoy works, someone you might not have used much because he's a little weird.
Right.
And yeah, this is I think the biggest beneficial thing we have in the game, is that we basically you can look at the characters like skills, right? And so what's something that we can do, because they're characters, we can just take them away. In an RPG, you could never say, yeah, I'm going to take away your skill. Like, player's going to be pissed. But if you do this in our game, it's okay, because we say, well, Doc McCoy is off doing this thing.
Right.
He's gone. Figure it out. This is the first thing, and we have this. So this is the mechanical character type of thing, and then we pace the amount of characters in the same way, and we try that we don't have any combination more than 2 times. Basically.
Okay.
And especially not in a mission that follows after the other. Like, if we can mix that up enough, it's fine. Like, if you... and then we look at the settings, and something we do at the beginning is that we ask the whole team, when we did Desperados, we were like, think of the coolest Western things that you want to see. And it could be anything. And then we would just put that in like, what is something like a mission, something like a train robbery.
Right.
What is an environment, like a gold mine. And we would have these things, and we would put them together, and then we sort of group them into what kind of assets can reuse this boring stuff. And then we pace it out with the characters. And we're like, okay, we start conceptualizing a gold mine level, a train robbery level, a blowing up a giant bridge level, and these sort of Western key moments that we think anybody wants to do in a Western game. The ones that we can do. Given our perspective, we're always very limited. Like, the first thing everybody says is a duel.
Right. Well, you kind of do. Yeah, the very end, you have.
Yeah, but it's hard to do, because we can't do the shot on the eyes.
Right.
We just can't give you that fantasy. So we Yeah, but basically it's this. We make this Excel, and then we did that for Shadow Tactics, and it worked, right? So people liked it, and then we just said, okay, let's just do it again for Desperados. And I basically took that Excel, and we swapped some stuff around. But it's basically the same pacing as Shadow Tactics.
Okay. Well,
it's
nice to know it's conscious. No, keep going.
Yeah, there's another thing that I started doing in Desperados for this is that we went for, like, there's two factors, I think. One of them is mechanical new stuff, like do we introduce a new feature where you're like, oh, this is awesome? And the other one is story. Are you excited by the setting or by what's happening in the story at this point? And I basically just assigned simple values where, like, okay, if I introduce a new character, the value is 2. If I introduce something like a new skill on one character, the value is 0.5 maybe, you know? And I just have this number of how much novelty does the mission have mechanically.
Yep.
And then I have the other number where I say how much excitement does the mission cause in you. Like, is it, for example, the first high point in the plot where you're like taking down one bad guy or blowing up the bridge, which is also a high point. And then we balance these so we don't try to do. If it's mechanically interesting, it doesn't have to be plot interesting that much. And if it's mechanically not that interesting, because we're just giving you stuff you already know, then we can ramp up the plot. And this is a simple thing that we can have run through the game.
Yeah, it's so effective. And I don't know. I don't know how many. I mean, when I was doing God of War, I literally did the exact same thing. I had on my whiteboard, it was like just a wave or some kind of, I don't know what the term would be, but it was like, we're up here and now we're down here, but we're down here, but we're giving you this. I don't know. Let's put it this way. If a lot of designers work that way, you wouldn't fucking know it, because a lot of games wear out their welcome way too soon. And you're like, there's nothing more than just the same stuff. So as a gamer, I appreciate it. I appreciate that level of thought and that level of attention to detail, because I finished it. I mean, that's the funniest thing. I was having a conversation yesterday, and I want to talk to you about Game Pass, but people were talking about the low completion rate that you get on Game Pass, and they were saying it like this is a bad thing. And I was like, I think it's actually a good thing, because it shows you and it shows designers perhaps how boring their games are. It's like, if you've given $60 or $70 or $40 or whatever to a game, there's this added incentive that really shouldn't be there to keep you interested. But if you already paid your $15 a month or $5, whatever it is, for Game Pass, you can drop within minutes and go, I'm moving on to something else. And so suddenly the game has to do a better job, which I think is good for the industry. I think it's like, well, then make your fucking game interesting. If you're only getting a 5% completion rate, somebody was saying Psychonauts 2, which I don't believe has a 5% completion rate. It's like, if your completion rate is only 5%, I know that's wrong because it's a great fucking game, but I'm like, that's not a problem with Game Pass. That's a problem with the game. So the fact that you guys are sort of ahead of that curve, going, we want to keep you engaged the whole time. Do you get data from Game Pass? Are you able to see the Desperados 3 completion rate?
I don't know it. Like, I don't have any info on Desperados on Game Pass, sadly, regarding these sort of things. I know it, like, from Steam, from looking at the.
Can you say what your completion rate is on Steam?
I think it's 10 or 15%.
Okay.
So it's not that high either.
Is it higher or lower than Shadow Tactics? My guess is higher, but I could be. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's about the same.
About the same. Okay, interesting.
Though it's something that very often I think, like, the game is very hard. So something that I get a lot is that people, they enjoy the game, but at some point they're like,
which game? Both or which?
Both.
Both. Okay. Well, okay, yeah, the ending for sure. Let me ask you one more design question about this. So I look at games like this. I look at games like XCOM or Jeanne d'Arc or what's the Nintendo Fire Emblem, and I know some are real time, some are not, Commandos. But I wouldn't know where to begin to designing a level for this. Like, if someone said, okay, Jaffe, you're an in-the-trench designer on Commandos 4, I would be like, how do you know when you've got enough raw material that it's going to be a compelling tactical experience? Because I would lean on the crutches of the stuff that I heard you say was problematic in Commandos 2, which is like, oh, let's throw some parachuters in now because it's getting boring. Whereas you guys, again, I play your game and the word that comes to mind is assured. You guys don't have a lot of enemy variety in Desperados 2 or Desperados 3. I would be like, fuck, give me 50 guys that have all these different things. How did you know that this was enough to be compelling?
Well, I mean, there always was Commandos to look at, right? And we really like Commandos, and Commandos doesn't have many enemy types.
Can you
like
articulate then why that was compelling with so little?
So I think that the way the game works, it doesn't really, and this is something that I don't know if they came up with it. It's probably just a lucky thing that happened during designing the game. The same, and we can rely on that. But I think it's just that the guards don't have to do as much. Like, we had a lot of concepts from many guards, and they would do different things and all that. But we implemented the basic things first, and then realized, okay, this is enough. Like, I can build compelling setups, and the reason for that is that the guards, they basically need one thing that you need to adjust, and that is how they react to the distractions of the player characters. And so the player, you have noise, you have vision, and that's basically it. That's all there is for players to and killing, of course, for players to interact with the AI. And it's just enough. Like, I don't know why it's enough, but I think it's just the way you can combine these things, and because there's always never one guard and there's 5 of them, and you have to sort of puzzle it out. But I'm not.
It's just organic. Sure. You're just going and feeling your way through it, it sounds like.
Yeah, the systems just interact in a way that it creates enough depth. I don't.
Okay, so when you sit to make a level, then you go in knowing, okay, because I don't imagine you lock. It's not like you get a board. It's not like you have all the pieces for Clue or Monopoly, and then you say, now let's do the board. I assume both these things are being designed in tandem. But is that correct?
Yeah, well, mostly. I mean, we knew the guard types, the basic guard types, very early, because they're also the same as in Shadow Tactics.
Right.
They're the same thing. So we got them, and then we got people started on building levels.
So when you design a level in a game like this, what is that? I know you have like the theme of like, let's pick a great Western scenario, but at that point, is there a meta to that? Like, okay, this level, after we know we're going to have, say, Kate and we're going to have Cooper, they're the stars of the level. We want this level to feel like X, and then you just start breaking down, like, do you do section by section, or is there a 30,000 foot view first, or how do you design a tactical level?
Yeah, so we have these things that are required, like where in the game will it take place, and all these, how's difficulty, how large should it be, and what characters are in there, and what's the theme. And then we do a complete block out of quickly, without any guards in it. It's just, how do we get the feel of the location right? We're just, okay, this is the bridge is over here, and then there's a sawmill right here. Oh yeah, sorry, before that we have a document where we just put in the areas that we want to have. Okay. We're like, okay, I want to have these in these areas, and we have a basic idea of how they should feel like from a gameplay perspective. So this should be about sneaking. This one should be about feeling clever using the environment.
Okay, so there is a high level emotional, this is what we want the vibe to be. Okay.
Though it doesn't, very often it doesn't carry over, of course, but there's a plan. And then what we did in Desperados was that we had one of our artists, he's actually the animation artist, but he enjoyed doing that. He painted a map from that. Like, we had this very ugly designer map where we're like drawing circles, and he would take that and he would make a layout, basically, that looks like a cool place. And then he would do that in like one day or something, quick sketch of a cool map, and have ideas during that. And then the level designer would take it and block it, and start blocking the whole. And we're fast with that because we had all the Shadow Tactics assets, so we could just build it quickly. And then what we'll do is we'll look at everything, at each area. We'll talk about it with artists and designers together. It's just look at it. This area doesn't feel right. I don't know. This something that's always hard to do is make the areas distinguishable. So we're like, okay, this needs an landmark. This needs to look. This looks the same as this area. We need to do something about this.
Right.
And we iterate on that quite a bit. A couple of weeks usually, and sometimes you just hit it early, but sometimes you hit it months later, and you always have something that's bugging you. The mission where Isabelle is introduced in Desperados took quite some time, and then when we're happy with that, we say, okay, the basic layout is locked. Now we start inputting guards.
Okay.
And we already have the areas where we like, okay, we call it a Kopfnuss in German. Oh no, it's a puzzle basically, right? We have this plan. Okay, there's 6 to 7 puzzles usually per map, and between there's some random guys or nothing or something. And then we will have people work on these.
Just so I'm clear, when you say puzzles, I mean there's not puzzles like an adventure game. You mean like a scenario that's a little more than just okay. All right.
That's all we mean that with a puzzle.
And those are solvable in multiple ways as well, though. I mean, in that is that handcrafted, or that's just like, look, you have the skills. However, are you surprised by how people solve these maps and it's very emergent, or it's both? Okay.
Yeah, it's handcrafted, because when we see a setup is too linear for whatever reason, we say it's not okay. Like, you need to put in more paths that are visible.
Right.
But we also learned that especially with Desperados and Isabelle and all that, that we can't control it enough. Like,
right.
In the beginning, this is very funny, because when we were doing the first game, The Last Tinker, was a game that was completely on rails. It was completely linear. And whenever we saw players do something we didn't like, we slapped on it and just changed it so they couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
And then we did Shadow Tactics, and we realized it's sort of a sandbox. And whenever we see someone do something that's cool, we try to support it if it works. So we try to maybe say, okay, this person did this weird path, so maybe I'll just put an ivy there for them that you can climb up, and it's going to be even better for them, or someone else will find that path. And the mechanics of how the player characters work, they are very powerful. So you can do a lot of shit in that game. Like, you can break it in many ways, these puzzles, but we're fine with that, because we know that one person completely breezes through this setup because they find something weird or do some weird stuff, and in the next one they're gonna get stuck harder than the person before.
Right.
We're like, yeah, that's fine. So we define a ceiling of what is too powerful, and we define a floor of what is not powerful enough, what sucks, what doesn't feel good, and everything that's in between, it's hard to control for us designers. We sort of have to be like, okay, just watch it. And whenever it spikes out at some point, because the combination of these two skills is too powerful or something, then we need to fix it. But only if it spikes out of that center, basically. It's how I think of it now.
Okay, I have to ask this, and I'm probably going to articulate it poorly, but I'm this interests me greatly. And I don't. Okay, so you're really describing two very different schools of design thought. One of them is like a Sandbox, Breath of the Wild, GTA, but one of them is like, let's say, Uncharted or the new God of War or whatever, where it's very crafted, right? Yeah. The industry now, at least if you look at console, and I know you guys aren't primarily console. I don't know if it applies to PC as much, but I play a lot of PC. But the industry now seems to financially reward, in terms of sales, more of the handcrafted, let me just take you by the hand and take you on a ride. But the quality of the interactive experience is so much greater on the left side, on the side of like, we don't really know what's going to happen, but here, have fun playing with our toys. And if you make, I mean, it's not that willy-nilly, of course, but yeah. I mean, is that a frustrating, like, you guys made a better game in Desperados 3. In Desperados 3, if I remember, I could be wrong, but I watched all the Game Awards stuff last year and the DICE Awards. You guys weren't nominated for Best Game Design, I don't think. You got a couple of nominations. But when I look at some of the games that were nominated for Best Game Design, or that are lauded in the press for Best Game Design, I'm like, motherfuckers, that's a script. This is a game. I mean, does that frustrate you guys? You're like, fuck it, I don't care.
I mean, so for me personally, like, it's very much like you described. I don't find it that frustrating. I find it a little sad, because I really enjoy the games that let me play, and that's why I love Arcane so much, because that's what they do. They let me play, and so I get a little frustrated when I see that these games don't have success. Like, I'm not. It's cool if the other stuff it's just not my type of game, right? I don't like it that much, but I'm fine. Like, it's incredibly well crafted in almost all aspects. Yeah. It's just, as you said, it's another school of thinking about it. It's more cinematic, and so I get sad when I see that for some reason the other things are just maybe too complex to get across why they are good, and you have to actually play it. That's something that we face all the time. Like, people look at our game and they're like, ugh, what the fuck is this? And once you get them to play, that's why we have, I think, 79% positive Steam reviews on these games, because once people play, they actually like it most of the times. Right. And yeah, so given the nominations and all that, we are happy that we actually got nominated, because I think it's this sort of, you have to be sort of known to actually be nominated in these things. I think in the larger categories.
Yeah.
So for us,
which is stupid. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but to actually be in the Game Awards this time was sort of the first step. So I think that maybe if the next game is going to be great as well,
right?
I hope it is. You never know.
Right.
Maybe then we can get nominated in a bigger category. That's how I look at that part.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole open, like how design philosophy thing, that's something. Yeah, I'm a little sad. I'm sad that games that I like a lot don't get rewarded with the monies.
Well, the money, or at least the accolades, as much, right? I mean, you would think that, like, at least in movies, the films that are really deep and interesting and compelling, that seem to understand the art form, at least they get to go home with the Oscar. You know, they're not making MCU money. But in video games, it's weird. It's like in video games, it's like they get the money and the awards. And it's like, what the fuck, you know?
I think it's a lot because the narrative can be a lot more mature.
Oh, no, fuck that. We're going to talk about narrative in Desperados because...
Yeah, but this is something that people in games aren't used to, I think, because the type of stories that games used to tell and still tell, they're not comparable to these type of movies we're talking about. Like if I'm talking about a movie that wins the Oscar, it usually has some very dramatic whatever thing.
Okay.
And the cinematic games that have the big budgets and all that, they're better at crafting these moments, I think. I don't think they're doing it particularly well.
No, they're better at crafting the moments if they were a movie. But they're not better at crafting the moments for the medium in which they're working.
I think so too, but I think as a gamer, very often people play it and they're like, I get to feel this in a game. I'm very interested in how this stuff will develop because I hope that it might develop in a different direction. I think there are games that are doing this with more like that let me actually experience the moment. And
well, let's talk about two things because that brings us to a crossroads and it's both related. First, let's go Game Pass, and then I want to talk about narrative and gameplay. So Game Pass, you know, to me, and again, I know you don't have all the data and whatnot on that, but to me, a game like this, Game Pass is made for a game like this because it's the kind of game that, because that barrier of entry is demolished with Game Pass, people are more willing to try. Or I can tell people, hey, you should try Desperados 3, and it's not going to cost them a $50 investment or whatever it is on Steam at any given moment. Have you seen, without talking figures, but have you seen engagement or love of Desperados? Like, has it pinged the radar again since it's come to Game Pass 3 months ago, 4 months ago, or you really haven't noticed any growing fandom because of it? Because I would imagine it's done really well on Game Pass for you guys, but I have no idea. Your CEO might be watching going, you're a fucking moron, Jaffe. We lost our shirt on that thing. I don't know.
No, he likes Game Pass a lot. I don't know about Desperados specifically because we haven't analyzed it as much yet. But I can tell you about Shadow Tactics, which also hit Game Pass at some point.
Okay, so on Shadow Tactics, how was the response?
Yeah, I think it was overall very positive in a way. I mean, it came a little later in its life cycle, so that might change the financials of it all. I don't know much about that. But we did not, as far as I know, notice a big dip in sales when it hit on Steam. It wasn't like, oh, Steam is going great, and then we do Game Pass and Steam tanks. That wasn't the case. Like, Steam was doing okay-ish, and then Game Pass was still doing okay-ish. It had almost nothing to do with each other. Maybe it changes how much you can actually charge. Like, if you're not on sale and stuff like that, that perception might change due to Game Pass, but I'm not sure. This is something that we're probably going to learn with Desperados a little more.
I would imagine as head of design or any designer, the stuff that you guys can get from Game Pass and Desperados in terms of data, if it's available to you, would be extremely helpful. Because, like, for example, I bought the DLC for Desperados, and because that's not included on Game Pass. I rarely buy DLC, but I rarely finish games, but I wouldn't have tried this game if it wasn't on Game Pass, right? So, as a designer, I'd be going, is our DLC selling more than a normal game that's not on Game Pass because we were on Game Pass? Or Desperados 4, which I know isn't announced and you guys aren't going to do probably, is that going to have a big opening because people love the third one and they only loved it because they got to play it on Game Pass. But okay, I understand. So there's a lot there you don't know about how it actually performed.
Yeah, but regarding the thing you said about people playing maybe Desperados 4 or another game in this genre because they got to play it for free, I think this for us is one of the biggest pros with having the older games there, because we're in the niche, right? So getting people to notice the game and actually engage with it is worth a lot, because we might convert some people into saying these games rock.
That's right. That's right. I went back to Shadow Tactics because I love this game so much.
Exactly. And so it is positive for us to just get people to play them at all. And then they might buy the other one, as you said, or they might be interested in our next game. They might follow us, whatever, buy DLC, whatever it is. But so overall, I think this is very positive for niche games like ours, that we can be, if we continue to make good games in this genre, then having the other games very accessible for everyone to play helps us with the new ones.
Can you say, you probably can't, well, maybe you can, who knows. Can you say what the budget was for Desperados 3?
I don't know if I can.
I'll tell you my last budget. My last budget for Drawn to Death which was a total bomb. I think we spent $12 million, $13 million to make it. My guess is Desperados 3 was substantially less.
Including marketing, or
no, just including production to make the game.
Yes, it was
like $3 million.
About that, I think. So that's not too far off. Like Shadow Tactics was about $1 million.
Okay.
Then with Desperados, we got more people, so we ramped up. So it got more expensive, but it's not near 10 million or anything.
Right. So yeah, because I asked because that's the other part that gets frustrating is it's like all the budgets are going up like crazy, and it's the head of the company going, "Don't you fucking tell them how much that is." And it's like, you don't need that much to make a great game. I mean, 3 million's not nothing, but there are games now on PS5 that are like 240, 250 million, and that's kind of becoming average. Obviously, there are outliers that are more than that, and then you guys go off and make one of the best games of the year for $3 million. It just something seems wrong. Right? Something seems, and I don't mean that like, let's just rant about it. I mean, something seems like, even when I sat and I did my keynote for Digital Dragons, and a big part of it, like I said, was Desperados, that was the hardest section I had to do, because to communicate, and maybe it's a marketing challenge, to communicate what is special about Desperados requires a lot more verbal language to say, well, let me explain what's happening and why this is exciting. Whereas I can just show you a cinematic game and it just hits. And maybe we just have to educate gamers more, but maybe there's no interest in doing that, because I don't fucking know. It's just, that's amazing to me that you guys with $3 million made a better game than a lot of these games that cost over $100 million. That's fascinating.
Yeah, the marketing thing is a huge challenge for us. Like, we have been trying to get across how our game, how to market this thing, and we haven't managed to do it since Shadow Tactics. We are hopefully going to do it with the next game, because we're self-publishing, so it would be good to do that. But so we have more control over that part this time, but it's hard, man. We're thinking a lot about how to do it, and as you say, there are no cinematic shots. And if you look at games with similar perspectives, like the RPGs and Baldur's Gate, Divinity, they all have graphics where they can actually zoom into the faces and actually do these shots, and that requires more than 3 million to do.
That's right.
So,
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So we're in between weird spaces there with the budget, that it looks very high quality for what it does, but we can never do certain cinematic shots or trailers in a way. So it's hard to get it across. And even if we could do that, then we still would have to explain to you why the game is cool. If you're looking at it and you see these cones and all that, and you're like,
right, absolutely. It's almost abstraction, but
yeah,
or you could just have a lot of those moments like where Kate leads like a dumb guy in front of a train, which was brilliant. I got to tell you, like, that's why I'm saying you guys are so much more assured than I was as a designer, because I would have forced that. Like, if you don't know, there's a character which we'll talk about in a minute named Kate, who's my girlfriend, and she is one of the abilities she has is she can sort of vex dudes, and they get all little hearts go around their heads, and they're in love with her, and she'll lead them wherever she wants for a certain amount of time. And one of the levels has this train that keeps going through the environment, and there are times where you can lead them pass the train right when it's coming and they'll just get slammed by it, which is brilliant. But I mean, moments like that, or moments like being able to mind control a chicken or take a chicken and knock somebody unconscious with a chicken, I would be going out of my way to force those to go, isn't this great? And you guys were confident enough just to say, they're there. You'll discover them if you do. If you don't, that's okay. I mean, was that a challenge, or that was part of the philosophy? You didn't want to force those moments.
Yeah, I think we try to just tell you can experiment in the game. And the game is a lot, like, it communicates a lot that you can experiment a lot just by giving the quick save, quick load loop that you do all the time, right? Yeah. It's like, just try shit out. So that is in there. And then we try to tutorialize as few as possible. And I think, again, this is something that we take inspiration from studios like Arcane or what were they called? Looking Glass. For how they approached it. It was the same. Like when I played Deus Ex for the first time when I was young.
Oh, it's a fucking great game.
At anything, right? I just did some stuff and then I'd keep looking at it. Or even when I play Dishonored or something, I don't get to engage with the system the way you can. But then I watch stuff on YouTube and I see people doing these things and I realize. And sometimes I have these moments myself where I will stumble upon something that actually works, and I'm like, "Wait, what? This works?"
In your game or in
their games?
In their games.
And taking this wonder and sort of this thought is, I think, what makes us think in that way. That we're like, okay, we want you to experience that yourself. Like we try to give you as few information as possible so that you can just get through. And whenever you have this little moment of, "Haha, I found something," or "Wait, what?" It's worth a lot more than if we told you to do it.
Right. Right. But if you told them to do it, you'd probably get more advertising and it would look good on TV. I mean, that's, or the internet. That's
maybe, yeah.
That's the problem. But yeah, it's more fun to discover it yourself. Okay. So I want to talk about the story stuff. And I know you're saying you weren't the lead writer on it. One of the things, so this may not be your wheelhouse, let me know, but I find, so okay, I'll briefly, it's not that interesting, but just give you some background. So I got into games by way of wanting to make movies, came out to California, went to film school, or tried to get into film school, was an English major, blah, blah, blah. And I made some games, they were successful, I got to do whatever I wanted. I made God of War, which for me was finally I get to make my movie game. Did really well, a lot of people loved it, but I was left very unsatisfied because I was like, this doesn't feel as good as a movie. And I started to recognize the value of mechanics and gameplay. If you're going to make a game, make a fucking game. Now and that's where my career went. It has not been that successful since because I'm not as good at making pure games, but I do think that's where the power of the medium lies. And storytelling, when you start to recognize the ability to affect emotion and story through mechanics and not obnoxious cutscenes, your mind gets a little bit blown because then the medium opens itself up. Now, I got to ask you, there were 3 things I noticed in this game, and these are spoilers, so deal with it, that I thought were brilliant. And I was an English major, like I said, and so we were sort of trained we would read a novel, and even though somebody inevitably in class would raise their hand and go, but that may not have been what the author meant, the teacher would be like, it doesn't matter. Is the material rich enough to allow for that kind of analysis, right? So you might hear all 3 of these that I'm about to share with you and go, no, fuck you, that was absurd. But let's just take the ending first, which I think is brilliant. I play the ending where you basically, your main character in this game is a guy named Cooper. Again, I'm saying this for you. You're like, no shit, Jaffe, I know, but I'm saying it for the audience. But the main character is a guy named Cooper, and he's raised without a dad. His dad gets shot in front of him, and he's kind of a loner to some extent, and he wants to do things on his own. And ultimately, the game seems to sort of be about him finding comfort in the fact that he has this band of friends and band of brothers and whatnot. And the fascinating part about it, and there's even a part where he doesn't betray them, but he really pisses them off because he gets hurt because he refuses to let them into his inner life or whatever. So at the end of the game, there's this showdown where he has arrived emotionally at a place where he has evolved to let these people in, and he realizes he needs them. The only way to solve that puzzle, which was just hang on. excuse me, the only way to solve that, thank you, is to say you've got to work with every single member in a very specific way. And to me, that is the brilliance of gameplay storytelling, is that this is a metaphor for what the actual character arc is. And you as a player have no choice but to go along for that emotional ride with him. Was that intentional? Or was that just like, oh yeah, it kind of worked, Jaffe, but it's just a cool puzzle?
No, that is actually intentional. Yeah. So we look at.
How do you not go to IGN and GameSpot with fucking squirt guns loaded with like permanent marker? I say these things because I know we're in an environment now where if I said guns, people would call the FBI. But how do you not just yell from the mountaintops like, you look what we did? You didn't nominate us for best writer. Look what we fucking did. Anyway, keep going. That was intentional. That was intentional.
Yeah, it was intentional. So where we do it with these things is we look at what we have in the game and what would make what we have in gameplay, basically, and how that can translate to the story. So we try to build a story around the gameplay. And this is often very hard, especially with games that are so mechanically weird as ours. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that we identified that the games are about, and something that you feel as a player a lot, is the team. Like, that's what it's about. The banter between them, how they work together. So having a narrative arc about a character that is a loner and has to sort of let a team in and let them help you, it just made sense with what the game has. And this is sort of how we try to approach it. And then we build it around that. With our new game, we're doing even more in that direction. Not going to know how it's going to turn out, but we try to embrace that part even more, basically. And yeah, so this is how we look at it. And then the finale, we worked a lot on it, and we decided, like, how is it going to be? What is it going to be? We have different ideas. And yeah, I'm glad you saw it that way in regard for you, because it was planned and it's what we try to do all the time. And I think actually that in Shadow Tactics, the narrative is also a reason why people enjoy it more, because there is a thing that happens in Shadow Tactics that has the biggest emotional impact, that's a lot bigger than what happens in Desperados. And it makes people hate the game as well. Like, there are people that get to that point and they're, fuck that game, I'm not playing it again. And I love that. It just creates, whenever I read a review on Steam and someone is, after mission 10, I hated the game. I'm like, yes. It's like,
right.
I got a real reaction from you. Like, this was real. It pissed you off or you loved it. But it was not some meh, and then you just kept playing.
Right.
Yeah, but whatever. So these sort of things, we try to do them, and we try to look at what do we have. And it gets hard because the gameplay stuff is very dumb sometimes. Like, so you cannot tell the stories that movies can tell. It's what you said in the beginning, and this is also where I'm always a little mad about these bigger single player games sometimes, because they try to tell a type of story that games don't tell that well. Like, right. It just doesn't work that well. So we thought about, like, do we want to tell a story about, because what do you do in our game as well? You kill people a lot. And we were thinking about, okay, do we want to put that in? Like, many games do that, right? Where they're like, oh, you've killed 500 people now. Haha, you're the bad guy, like this kind of angle.
Right,
and it would have worked. It's something that we can do in our game, but we thought, well, killing is fun in our game. It's supposed to be fun.
Right.
Like, and we don't want to put that on it. We don't want to put a weight on that we cannot carry, because we want you to have fun while solving these puzzles. We want killing to be John Wayne, I'm shooting a guy, and
it's as much killing as when you kill a knight in chess. You're not killing a guy on a horse. It's
exactly,
yeah, absolutely.
It's fun, and it had to be there. So we decided not to tell that kind of story, because that would mean that we would have to create emotion in that part, and we didn't want that. And the team part did work. Yeah.
So I know the game was well reviewed, Desperados 3, but did you get accolades, at least in the reviews, for that kind of effort, or did they not mention that stuff?
Not really.
Okay.
It's mostly the story. Well, usually it's like there's a couple of cool moments in the story. I mean, they cannot spoil it, right? So it's the end of the game, so they couldn't write about it if they wanted to. Sometimes we get the story is just there to support the gameplay, which again is true in a way, so we're not sad about that. Like, we always know that
Hey, we lost him. Where'd he go? All right, hang on. Let's try to get him back. TK421, why aren't you at your post? All right, let me see where he went. I got this. I got it's what I wanted to ask him about. Hang on. Yeah, we're talking about Desperados 3 right now, fellas. If you're listening on the podcast, we just lost Mo. Hopefully we will have him back in just a brief moment. Again, if you want to call in and talk to the good sir, you can do that as well. In the meantime, let me get the super chat that came through. Not much to say. It was just a nice one. Thank you so much, Goofy Rasta, for all your support through for quite some time. Are we still streaming, though? I think we're still streaming. I think it was just Mo that we lost. Let me double check. Yeah, we're still going. We're still going. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get him back on. But anyway, yeah, this is Desperados 3. What I'm going to talk to him about next, if we can get him back in, is I do want to talk to him about some of the more... Here we go. He's coming back in. We lost you.
There we go. Yeah, my internet.
No worries.
Went down.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, now this stuff here may be reaching. I don't care because that's what I felt and it's valid,
Yeah.
but you may be like, yeah, that was not intentional. But the ones that got a little bit more maybe out there, but I still felt were about the characters. And I think one, I'm going to give you the Isabelle one first. And this may just be because we're in a very weird and unfortunate time in America, but in a lot of ways we always are because of a lot of reasons, different conversation. But Isabelle, who is a black woman, what I found was, and maybe it's just the way I played it, when I play her, the very nature of her mechanics caused me to make her the character that most often was not with the rest of the team. So a lot of times I realized that to kind of move forward after we had completed a chunk, I had to get everybody back together, and it was always Isabelle was somewhere else in the map. And it started to dawn on me personally, and this may not have been intentional, maybe it was, that even that in and of itself was an interesting metaphor. It was, here you have the one person of color, and she's kind of othered a little bit. She's not treated poorly in the game, but the very nature of the mechanics causes her not to be with all the white people. I mean, is that just me reading into it, or did you guys recognize that while you were making it?
I wish I could take credit for that one, but no, that was not intentional.
Okay, do you
But
find
it makes sense if you say it? Like, I get it.
Right.
But we didn't know.
Right.
We never thought that way.
So subconsciously you're racist. You just don't know it yet. And I just let you know. Okay, fair. The other one is Kate, which I thought was really interesting. So, and I know Kate kind of goes back. I never played the first Desperados. I think I played one of them that were they always strategy? I kind of get Call of Juarez.
Yeah, they were always at some point they had third person, which broke stuff. Okay. Yeah.
So, but this was my first Desperados. So fuck you, Sad Khan. Sad Khan in the chat says Jaffe's reaching. I'm not, let me tell you something. Fucker. The artist doesn't have to know what he's doing a lot of times. Every time I ever made a game, it was only when I was done with it that I was like, oh my God, this was me making a game about this. I didn't even realize. I don't know if does that happen to you, that when you're finished, you can look back and go, oh, I was expressing this, or not really?
Given that our games are so mechanically, and especially how I view them is so mechanically, it doesn't really happen to me a lot.
Right.
But no.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that because I have a question. But okay,
Yeah.
So Kate is a character in the game that you know, like I said, she's very attractive to me. I like her. She's my girlfriend. Can you give me her number? You think you're going to date with Kate? It's like, dude, you're a 50-year-old man, you fucking moron. Sit the fuck down. She's hot. What do you want me to tell you? Anyway, so she's in this game. One of her abilities is she flirts with dudes, and she's badass. She shoots, she punches. There's nothing about her that doesn't let her hold her own. But there's also a clear embracing or acceptance and a celebration of her femininity, right? Is that something? And again, this may be a very American, because we deal with a lot of these politics now, which may be foreign to Germany in terms of all the social justice and all this stuff. But I played that and I said, that's really cool that you have a character that is absolutely okay being sexualized, and not only being drawn in a way that's sexy, but she's utilizing that as one of her powers, but it doesn't lessen her. She's still able to kick the shit out of, she might be one of the most powerful characters in the game simply because of her ability to go wherever she wants, right? But she can only go wherever she wants once she has the right outfit. Think about what you guys are poisoning the brains with capitalism and consumerism. It's like, yeah, you can be powerful, but you got to have the fancy clothes. Think about that.
But you steal it, right?
But you steal it. That's right.
Take it,
that's true. That's true. But I mean, that's something that, okay, I mean, we don't educate, this is my own little soapbox, pardon me, but it's like we don't educate like we educate with movies or books or television or music, people to look at stuff this way. And again, I appreciate that it might not have been intentional, but I want you to tell me if it was or wasn't, or how. Okay, I'm going to get back to that point, but how much of that stuff when you were creating Kate and her abilities was ever top of mind? Or again, that was like, dude, she was a chess piece, we didn't think about it?
We actually thought a lot about that. I'm happy that you view it that way and it turned out that way.
Yeah.
Like Kate, she was that way in the old games.
Okay.
And she was that way in a way that was, I personally don't like. I think it was a little sexist. And
in the old games.
In the old games.
How was it sexist? Because I'm not familiar with them.
It was more like explicit in the way that she dressed and the way that she was designed and looked. Like our Kate is a little more toned down, and she's a little more class and all that.
Okay.
So, but it's something that I don't want to tell them that it was sexist. They just didn't think about it back then.
Different times, yeah.
Years ago. Yeah. So it just was that way, and we looked at it and we figured that okay, this is the part that fans want from that character. Like this is her in that game and in that world.
Yeah.
So how can we take that and keep that, but make it more appropriate? And that is what we basically tried. And it was a lot of just constantly asking ourselves, like, is it cool? And I was afraid until the end that we didn't get it right, that she might just be like sexist, that you would look at her and be like, yeah, well, that's, what the fuck did you guys do with that character? And and I'm happy it didn't turn out that way. Like there was some feedback went into that direction, and I guess that's fair, because she, as you said, she's very powerful, but she has that side in her. Like that is an integral part of her. And
which I think is, frankly, I mean, you're getting into politics now, but I mean, personal politics, but a lot of women have that side. There's nothing bad about that. But if that's all they are, then it becomes a problem. But yeah, I love that she could use a lot of her aspects.
And I think, like, if we probably wouldn't have designed her that way if we made her ourselves. Like, if she was one of our original characters, we wouldn't have gone down that road because we wouldn't have felt comfortable that we could probably get it right. We would just in the beginning have said, no, let's just not do that. Let's not use that cliche, basically.
Right.
But we were sort of forced to do it because that's who she was in the old games, and we wanted to honor that. And then we thought about how can we do it in a way that we feel works. And then we put a lot of work into making that work. So there were a lot of discussions about how she would behave in certain situations. How should she look? How should her skills work? And yeah, it turned out well, I hope.
She's a great.
That was a struggle.
She's really great, and I love that. Again, unfortunately, Desperados 3 really isn't in the conversation like a lot of these other games that get written about on Kotaku or Polygon or whatever. But I would love. I love her as an example of a character that can own her sexuality and be hot, but she's not written in such a way and she's not designed in such a way that makes her that's all she is. It's almost like, fuck you to these hardcore SJWs. And I am a very progressive guy, but it's like, it's okay to be sexy. It's okay to be sexual if you have other things going on. And it's great to see a character. I haven't seen a character that does both in games is what I'm saying. So I think it's wonderful. Okay. So last thing about all of that kind of stuff is, so where I was going originally was like all these other mediums have, it's not that I've never chased respect. Obviously I don't care about that, but the other mediums are willing or able to get people to talk about subtext. And this medium seems to have a real hard time. Like you and I can have the conversation. And even though I might be reaching with Isabelle, I'm clearly not reaching with the ending, or I'm clearly not reaching with Kate's character. And even the fact that it's like, okay, what does it mean about consumerism? What does it mean about being a woman? You know, what does it mean about this, that, or even going, yeah, but she stole it, right? I'm not saying that should always affect or ever affect moment-to-moment game design and commerciality of a game, but that's not even part of the conversation with games. And I guess my question is, does it frustrate you? B, should it be? And how do we make that more normalized? Because I think people are missing out on, if you're not even aware of those things, you're not going to experience those things because you're not open to, oh, this is metaphor, this is subtext, this is about something more than just what's on the surface.
So I think that it's just that the medium is so young. I mean, this is a very hard.
It's not that young though. By the way, by the time movies were as old as games were,
yeah,
we had we were in the 1950s. We had It's a Wonderful Life, Wizard of Oz, Casablanca, Citizen Kane. I mean, we had all that shit.
That's true, but I think the similarity, like if I look at what medium came before, or where they could draw a lot of inspiration from, one of them is books, and there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
And plays, exactly. And it's not that far off from a play. Like you can recreate the
that's a
emotional
good
moment
point.
from a play very good in a movie.
That's a great point.
But games are completely different. So that we have to figure
But games have been around for millennia, though, to be fair. Not video games.
But not like narrative games. Like I think that much. I mean, probably they have been.
But not yet.
But not as a serious medium, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that we're learning that. And I think there's a lot happening right now. Even if I look at games that are very, like the big AAA games that are doing this, they are pushing there constantly. I mean, they're doing it in AAA steps, right? They have to be very careful.
That's right.
There's a lot of indies that are just there, as usual. They're pushing the stuff and they're just going very hard because they can afford to. They can just do this weird game about this weird thing where I can... If I look at Edith Finch, for example, I love that game. It's a game that combines controls mechanics with emotion in a way I've never seen before, and I think it completely pushes the envelope on what's possible there. Now, something like that comes out, and maybe 8 years later, the AAA can be confident enough to put that into the game.
Do you know that game was in production? Sony Santa Monica launched that game with Giant Sparrow, I think, is the developer of that game. And they eventually said, yeah, we're not going to make any money in this, so we have to let it go. And Annapurna picked it up. The fact that Sony wouldn't publish one of the best games the last 5 years, 10 years is all you need to know about the market. I mean, it's crazy. It's brilliant.
But it's going to get there, I think, at some point. And if I look at, for example, Last of Us 1 and Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I critique a lot about these games regarding that, because they have this very different directing style, as we talked about. So I think they're incredibly well made.
Me too.
That one off. But if I look at, there is a big step up there. And of course, it's still, in my opinion, very clunky if I compare it to a movie or something, because it just tries to be something that it cannot be. But they've gotten a lot better, and they're pushing in certain ways that it works better than the first one. And it aligns mechanics and gameplay a little better. And if we look at the new God of War, like they're getting better at this. They're doing it. It must be incredibly hard for these huge teams. Like, I know how hard it is for us, and we can do what the fuck we want. Like, if I want to do something, I can do it. And if the writer wants to do something, we fight, and then he can do it. And so it's not like that. We don't have to go through corporate structures. And we don't have to communicate that to thousands of people that have to pull on this. I don't want to imagine how hard that is, but I think that it's very early, and I think it's getting better. And I'm interested in what it turns out. I'm waiting for that moment when we suddenly, maybe, hopefully crack it. I don't know if it works like that or if it's just a gradual...
I think it's gradual because it's cracked already, but the more people become aware of the examples of when it works, I think the more designers start to go, oh, that's an option for me. I can actually be a writer through the medium of games and not a writer that writes cutscenes in between the gameplay, or dialogue or whatever that plays over the gameplay. So, we'll see. But it's a fascinating road that I wish we spent more time on as an industry in general. Okay, and you guys, you said there's like 3 key guys at your company, right? That are the leadership. And you're one of them?
Well, we're doing the game design. Like, there's a lot more people we're not doing art. So there's a lot...
Okay, because I asked because some of these things are so abstract that when you have to convince the other team, um, uh, the rest of the team to sort of buy in on this, I could like I work. One of the last teams I worked with, not Drawn to Death, it was like pulling teeth because some guys were just like, we're just shooting missiles. Why are you worried about this, that, or the other? I mean, is it hard to sell a team like this on something so abstract, or you've built up enough trust with each other?
Actually, it's almost on the contrary. Like we come up with these things and we pitch them, and then usually they don't work out because they're hard to do, and then we have to cut it down and cut it down and cut it down until something is left. And everybody in the team is actually trying to push towards more of that.
Okay, cool.
There's nobody who's saying what. Usually they're disappointed with what we end up with. Not in a, this sucks, but it's more like it could have been this thing, and it turned out like this.
I understood.
So no, we don't have to do any. Even more, we would have to probably hold them back a bit to not overshoot, because they are all very passionate about these things and they want to shoot high.
That's good. That's great. That's great. So the desire and the decision to self-publish, which is where you guys are going now with the next game. How much of that, like if you read your website, there's a whole, post about how controlling your own destiny and making all the decisions and all that. Were most of the decisions that were sort of challenging for you guys as a developer more on the business or marketing end, or did you have executives from the publishers pushing too much into design and story and all that as well?
They would never, we are very fortunate regarding that.
Okay.
With Shadow Tactics, we could basically do what we want, and we got support when we wanted to. We could ask their writers. That was the Delic, and they are developers themselves, so we could ask their writers. We had their head writer, who's a very good writer, read up our script and send it back and stuff like that. And with THQ it was the same. Like of course there's sometimes smaller things where you're like, well, they want to do this with the IP, but I mean Desperados is not a huge IP.
Right.
It was basically dead. So for them it was like, yeah, you guys reboot it. We tried to be very open to that in the beginning. We're like, we want to have creative control, and that is very important to us. So we told them it's going to be a reboot in some cases. We're going to do a prequel because we don't want to rely on what has been there before. We want to rewrite it.
Right.
And they were cool with that, and they never interfered in any major way.
And that was THQ Nordic, right? Who did the new one? Okay.
Nordic.
So then what was the impetus then to risk it and go, we want to publish?
I think all of our publishers did a good job. Like we never had big problems with them, but it's something that so the one thing is we always wanted to do it. And one of the reasons is the financial reason, of course, because you lose a huge amount of money if you're working with a publisher. I mean, they have the risk, so I guess that's how it works. But I think everybody in game dev knows that treadmill of working one publishing deal, you never get out. And the goal was always to get out of that, to be able to finance our own games. And now we had the chance to do that with the German funding that we get and all that. So that helped. That's why we said, if not now, then we're probably going to never do it, because we're getting more and more expensive, and it's going to be hard because the team's growing. And so we did it. And then something that also plays into it, and I don't mean that as like to diss any publishers or anything, but if you're in a marketing department of a publisher, you have like 7-10 titles that you have to do marketing for. Right. So the emotional connection that you have to the thing, even if you're totally hyped by it, it can never be the same as the team that does it. Right. Which can be an advantage, because the team, we're a pain in the ass to work with for every publisher regarding that part, because we're so annoying and we're always like,
and you're so close to it. Yeah. Yeah.
And they can be, and now we're taking steps back and like, nothing mattered. It didn't matter, but we were in there. Yeah. So this is something where we're like,
by the way,
I want to see how.
Let me just say to the audience, because when you and I can kind of have a knowing nod and we know what we're talking about, but if you don't know what he's talking about, yes, especially when you're starting with dealing with marketing, and I guess this is sort of the THQ probably represents the biggest marketing budget you guys have had with Desperados. Yeah. You think a lot of these small things are going to ultimately add up and make a difference. Like, no, you've got to have Kate look this way, or she can't do this, or that would never be that color scheme or whatever. And end of the day, your fate is sealed for the success your game is going to have in a handful of places, and that's it. It's the genre you pick, it's the platform you pick, it's the thematic you pick, And then obviously, is it well tuned? Is it play tested? Blah blah blah. But it don't matter if Kate's hair looks a little less red on the banner, then it makes no difference. But when you're starting dealing with marketing, you think all that shit matters, and it doesn't make a fucking hill of beans.
It's exactly that, and you just get obsessed. And so with Desperados, with Shadow Tactics, we were really bad with that, and then in Desperados, we already took a step back and said, okay, like, we're gonna let them do the trailers. Like, we might give them a little feedback and but we're not gonna work on concepts of trailers, not because we just can't. The time thing, and it just frustrates us all the time, So we just stopped doing that, and now we're like, we want to see what it's like if we can actually do it ourselves. And this is where it's about, we're going to be failing, because we're going to see how hard that stuff is. And then we're going to be like, oh man, that's why all the publishers did it that way. And that's why it's going to happen 100%. But I still think that there's going to be certain things that maybe we can communicate a bit better, because we just know the game better. Like, nobody knows the game as good as we do. And even if we talk to people about it, it's hard to communicate sometimes. And now we have a guy at the crowd, we were talking to him as well, who's doing the marketing for us now, and the community work, and we can talk to him from day one. Like, he's asking us, what's this about, and he's there when every time we do a pitch about, like, I'm pitching a new mechanic or something to the team or whatever, he's always there. He sees the whole development of the game. So
do you think he's watching us right now?
He was at some point.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Anyway, keep going, sorry.
But so he gets the game a lot more than anyone in the publisher ever could. And I'm not.
And he's invested, right? He works for the company. He's if you guys succeed, he succeeds. I mean, there's probably an emotional and financial investment as well that he has, which is wonderful.
And he spends years with the game, just as we do. Not as the marketing and the publisher come in at a certain point usually, and they then have to do like so many releases at once, so they can put that amount of attention on the game, and it's. Even if they wanted to do more, they just can't. It's just the time budget they have.
So we know it's real-time strategy or tactics. I know you can get into a whole conversation about what is tactics and what is strategy, but we assume it's kind of building off the bones. I think you guys have said as much. I'm interested in, I know you can't reveal the thematic or the IP or anything yet, but so Desperados, Shadow Tactics was a brand new IP, correct? There was nothing, okay. But that was a theme you really liked. I guess Desperados just came to you in a sense that you don't love Westerns so much, but fuck it, this is an opportunity that
we like, and it's me who doesn't like Westerns that much. It's not everybody in the team. And Desperados was influential for us, of course. I mean, I love that IP.
Sure.
You know? I mean, the reason that we made Shadow Tactics is not only Commandos, it's also Desperados. And so it was an honor as well for us to be working on that IP that got us into doing this in the first place.
It is interesting that you've got a group of mostly, if not entirely, German people making at first a very Japanese game, and now it's a very American game. I'm playing a wonderful game right now called Gas Station Simulator, which I know sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's a fucking phenomenal sim.
Okay.
And but it's made by people in Poland, and it is so got that Americana landscape of Route 66 and roadside attractions. It's just got it down, and you're like, how are people in Poland getting the level of nuance that this takes? But so for your next game though, I'm not fishing for data on it so much as I am curious about Shadow Tactics. At least to me, Shadow Tactics and Desperados feel very conceptually, not mechanically, meat and potatoes thematically. We talked to Edmund McMillan, the Super Meat Boy guy and Binding of Isaac. His games are clearly incredibly personal. With this next game, are you guys looking to be more sort of on the nose, thematically artistic and about something, or are you still going for that? That might be in the subtext, but the conceptual is going to be just as sort of meat and potatoes as ninjas and cowboys.
I think I can't talk about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I don't care about the game. I mean, I care. I'm interested, but I'm more curious, I guess. Are you feeling, or is the team feeling like a desire to express more of that kind of indie sense of, the themes can be more about, that dragon cancer or whatever, or is it like that's not really in your DNA? That's more what I'm curious about. Less about.
Okay, so regarding that, it is since we're coming from the, as I said before, like what does our gameplay do and what can we do with that narratively,
right,
and also setting wise, we are very limited. So even if we wanted to do a game that is about these very, very deep things, I don't think our mechanics would be the right vehicle for that.
right,
So
right.
we don't. What we always talk a lot about the meaning and what we think the game should mean and what it's about, but we know that there's certain things that we don't feel comfortable tackling with our type of game, because we just think, I think that if somebody who actually really wanted to talk about that and did not have to make a real-time strategy, stealth, whatever game.
Right, why? Yeah, go write a book, right?
They can make that game, and it's going to be so much better at talking about that thing than our game, because our game can talk about certain things, and that certain things only because it's a game in a certain way, because the mechanics work in a certain way. But what we are trying to do, as I said before, is we're trying to embrace even more of that. Like, what is our game, and what can we do with it narratively? And I want to give a quick tangent to Deathloop there, because I think it's very funny. Mm-hmm. When I see Deathloop, I see them doing the same thing. Like, everything in that world, everything they have done there is so aligned with the mechanics they have. Like, they have the whole narrative about so much stuff in that game just is there because the mechanics were there first. I'm sure of that. And then they were like, okay, how can we make a story where it doesn't break because of our mechanics?
Yeah.
Because the mechanics are part of the world, and they are approaching it that way. And then and that creates a weird and unique world, and they are probably going to talk about some cool stuff. But this is more how we approach it. So we look at the mechanics, and then we're like, what can we do without breaking it? And it might even be more gamey than it was before, but it hopefully works together. So we don't go from it from the side of, I want to talk about this topic that is dear to my heart, that I want to express something about. I go from, what can my game express?
Right. I mean, that's a very measured, mature, disciplined approach that I think a lot of folks don't, and certainly I didn't, but I think a lot of folks don't go with that first, because it's a very, it's hard to think mechanically. It's easier to think conceptually. It's easier to think, for most people, it's an idea about this, and then let's wrap a game around that. So I think the other thing I like hearing you say, because not enough people say it, is that you guys fight. So many of these behind-the-scenes documentaries, I'm not saying you guys are like beating the fuck out of each other, but it's a contact sport. I mean, it's everyone's passionate, everyone's driven, and there's going to be disagreements. I mean, I'm assuming that that's sort of, you look at that as part of a healthy creative experience, correct?
Yeah, and what helps a lot is that, especially like if I fight, it's usually with one of the three game designers, because we know each other very well. I would never get in a fight with like someone who works for me, basically, and it not good. But in that case, that happens sometimes, or at least we disagree very strongly about something, and because we know each other now for 12 years now, studying together and being sort of friends, the person, and it never had this thing where we would be in that meeting, we would be like, man, no, this cannot be this way, can't you see it? And this way, and then we would go out and we'd be like, okay, so what are you doing tonight? Oh yeah, cool, okay, nice, have a nice evening. I was never mad at the person, and I know that they were hopefully never mad at me, at least sometimes when I'm eccentric or something, they maybe are, but so that never was something, and that helps, of course. If you know that that's the case, you can be harsher in your discussion. Right,
because it's all about love for what you're making.
Exactly, and it's never personal. It's never about the person. It's always about the topic you're talking about.
Let me ask you, we've got a couple more questions, and I want to bring in a call or two. We've been talking a while. I appreciate it. So I just want to ask briefly about the German funding thing. So Germany says, hey, tell me if this is how it works. Germany says, we want more developers here. One of the ways we're going to incentivize that is we'll help you pay for some of your games. So I imagine the new game you guys are making is partially funded by, royalties you've made off your games from the publishers, as well as the German fund. What are the requirements? Is it like you have to have a certain percentage of local talent, or how do you get, and do they care what your game is as long as you meet the requirements of, like, you've hired 80% people within X miles of the capital, or how does that work?
So the steps with the funding in Germany it took quite some time, because games had a hard standing in Germany. Like, the German games was very hard because of the whole violence thing. In Germany, politics just they didn't like games, and you had no chance to get any money. So there was a lot of work done over many years, and our CEO Johannes here also did a lot of work in politics, where he talked to politicians with other people, of course, to get this funding going, and it finally happened after like 10 years of all, or even more people who are in longer. And in the beginning, the funding was like there was funding from Bavaria, not Germany, but Bavaria, the state we're living in, and that was small, like was 80,000 or 150,000 or something. So you couldn't make a big game with it. But that's what got us started. So we used that for our first games. And now finally there's the big funding, and it works in a very different way, because the other ones you had to make a pitch, and then there would be people, and there would be like, okay, I like that pitch the most, we're going to give them the money. And so you can never rely on it as a company. You'd be like, well, if you don't get the money from the pitch, how's my business plan going to work out?
Right. And it was just subjective calls. We like this game, we don't like that game. Okay.
I mean, they had, of course, some sort of metric, I guess, but in the end, it was a person sitting there making decisions, or a group. And with the new funding, they structured it in a way. Now, I'm not a complete expert, so there might be some things off here, but basically anyone can apply to this, and you have sort of this checklist where you have to be like, there's stuff on there that is about, okay, if you do something that plays in Europe or Germany, you get bonus points, basically, and if it does this and that. But
it's like a little game.
Yeah, you basically play this little game, and if you have enough points, then you get the funding, no questions asked.
Nice.
If there's still money. So you can plan with that. You can say, okay, I'm making a game, I hit these points. Of course, it's always complicated because there's bureaucracy and stuff like that.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff you have to do, but in theory, that's how it is. Something you have to do is you have to pay half. Like you will only get as much as you basically can put in as a company. So if I put in 1 million, I can get funding of 1 million. And the more funding I get, the more I have to put in percentage-wise.
Right.
So you just can't say, I put in 3 million, I get 3 million. At some point, it diverges a bit. But that's basically how it works.
Do you have to pay it back, or no? It's not a loan.
No, you do not.
Oh,
this
wow,
is
that's great.
The huge part about it. It's basically, as you said, they want to boost the German games industry with this. They want to get companies to come here and be here, and especially, of course, AAA, which is usually if you have AAA, then you spawn out of that. And there is not that much AAA. Ubisoft has, I think, also partially, they had companies here as well already, or studios here. But I would assume that because of the funding and all that, they have opened up more studios now.
Got it.
And then there's Crytek, who was a AAA developer,
Sure.
and Jager. But that's it, basically.
Okay. I got a couple weird questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Andy Lee, who's waiting to talk to you in the call.
Okay.
Is there one lesbian in Desperados that Kate can flirt with? There's got to be one Easter egg, right? Because the women are mostly immune to her charms, and then you've got the guys in the leather trench coats that I assume, I don't know, maybe
they just hate everyone.
They hate everyone, right? So but I was like going, there's got to be one girl or one guy that they're just like, no, I'm not into that, right? That what's up?
Lighter?
Yeah, I don't. I'm streaming right now though.
Where is it?
Probably Cal's room. Okay, bye. So was there one or no? An Easter egg?
So there is not one that she can actually flirt with, but we have this thing in that some of, like, if she talks to a female guard, they will say no.
Right.
And some of the lines are written in a way that they're like, well, I would like to, but I can't.
Got it.
So this is something we put in because they don't really. It's sadly not consistent. Like we couldn't say this person would like to is always behaving that way.
Right.
Like it's randomized. So if you talk to her,
no, I just didn't know if there was like a little secret because it just seems like such.
We put that in because we wanted to, have both basically. But
semi-related question, but this is just because again in America right now things are crazy when it comes to social politics and stuff. But okay. I'm just gonna say it. There's a line in the game where they talk about the mayor or the governor, the guy who was going to marry Kate.
The mayor, yeah.
And it's like he's been waiting for her to come of age for a long time. And I'm watching this or I'm playing this going, that is so creepy. And I don't think if it was a Sony game, we would have been allowed to put that line in because you're basically saying he's a pedophile. You're basically saying, right? I mean, was that just, you didn't even think about it? Like in America, we would have probably had 20 meetings about that line. Like, can that stay in the game or not? That wasn't even a thing?
No, I don't know the intentions of writing, but what I assume is that this was mostly like, we're not historically correct or anything, but
Right.
these are the sort of things where we go like, that's what it was back then.
That's
like,
what it is now for some people. I'm not denying
true.
the guy's a creepy dude. I'm just saying that.
But yeah, so I think it's more of that. It's like, this was something that could happen during that time, a lot more likely than now, I guess, or it was more accepted than now, I guess.
Right.
So this, I think it's more about that.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, he's a dick in all regards.
And he gets what's coming to him, which is nice, in a nice bloody way. You talked to somebody recently about reaching goals and saying that, and this is just like, I'm with you 1,000%. What Mo was saying is, correct me if I'm paraphrasing poorly, but the gist of it was, you have these goals. You want to get an award, or you want to be top of the charts, or get accolades, and then you get there and you go, oh, my life is still my life, right? And I one of the reasons a lot of people get confused why I don't do games anymore is so much of my drive back in the day was ego driven. I didn't love the work as much as I loved the response to the work, and eventually that doesn't sustain the soul, right? That becomes, why do you think that is such a prevalent assumption among people, that the achievement of the goal is why you should do the work versus the work itself? Like, is that just baked into the culture, or what do you think? Because to hear that that's a German thing as well, that it's not just an American pure, I know you guys are capitalists too, but it's, America's so overt about it. I mean, why do you think that's out there? Because I think it's a damaging assumption that people have.
I don't know. I think it is because, well, okay, so, I mean, there's probably professionals who know a lot more about that, but for me, it's like, I'm someone who suffers from it a lot. Like, I am very, very much driven by that. I have not even figured out how to stop that. It's not like I can say it, I know it's there, but I can't stop it. Like, and I'm pretty sure that for many people in the studio, probably that's not the case as much as for me. It was a personal thing.
Just to be specific, you mean you suffer from what? Just so
from being that goal driven and
Got
just going from goal to goal to goal and thinking that. And I know it's not going to do anything, but it's still what keeps me going.
Because you've gotten them, and after you've gotten some of your goals.
Exactly. I've gotten a lot of these goals, and it always just opens up the next goal. So there's no, and I'm happy about achieving the goal for a short time, but it's not what's fulfilling in the end, as you said. But I haven't found how to stop that for me yet.
I just quit.
The thing is,
that worked for me.
Like, it's not even only in games for me. It's whatever I do. It's that way.
Right.
So if I did, when I was rapping, it was the same thing. When I was doing this and that, it's always this, and I go from goal to goal. And yeah, games has been the longest to keep you
sustained. That's cool.
Yeah, so I think there's
my last question that I'm going to bring in, Andy. Why do you think Warhammer, which you're a big fan of, was not as it's? I've played the games over here. I love the art style. It never has caught on in America. Why do you think Warhammer is such a big deal everywhere else in the world? It's like soccer, but in America, Warhammer is just this like, nobody gives a shit. Oh yeah.
I think that like the competitive scene is.
I mean, it's a cult thing here, but like Warhammer games never do well here. No one's like banging down Universal's door to make a Warhammer movie. I don't know. There's no real answer to it. I'm just.
I don't know. Maybe what I would assume is that like Warhammer is a very dark setting. It's very hopeless. And it finds a lot of irony in that, but I think it has a very British way of looking at things. It's like everything sucks and it's still funny. That is sort of
it's kind of like Judge Dredd, right? That 2000 AD vibe. Okay, fair enough.
Everything is bad in that world. There's not a single good person in Warhammer, basically. They're all dicks.
Right, right.
And so maybe that is something that just doesn't go that well in America, because in America it's very different. Usually it's more of a heroism,
right?
These sort of vibes that Warhammer doesn't really. I mean, it has all that in it, but it sort of makes fun of it.
It's like in America we're all heroic and all that, but inside we're actually dying and crying. but in Britain they're just like, no, it's shit. We're living in the muck. That's what it is.
So maybe that's a thing that
somebody on the chat, maybe they'll start putting it up on the Mimimi site. Somebody wants your mixtape. So, Ruthwick Rayo says we need Mo's mixtape. So it's coming soon. All right, I'm bringing in Andy Lee. What we're going to do is, real quick, we'll mute ourselves in Zoom. We'll stay on video, and then we'll go live on the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I am on the Discord now. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
This is Andy Lee. Andy, you are on with good sir Mo Wagner.
Hi, Moritz. Question. First of all, Desperados 3, I think it's a great game. Have you heard any word or had a conversation with developers from the previous 3 games that had started the franchise?
Yeah. Hi, by the way. Yeah, we had at Gamescom when we were showing the game. They were actually the people who made the game. I think they're Black Forest Games now, and they're part of THQ. So we were actually in the same booth where we were showing Desperados. They were showing Destroy All Humans, I think it was at that time, the remake. And we had some of them over giving them the presentation that we were giving the press. So there's not that many who, like the creative director or director is not part of that company anymore. I don't know what he's doing. He's still in games. But they found it pretty cool from what they said. And all we've heard was positive so far from them. And we also got to talk to the director of Commandos, actually, when we made Shadow Tactics at Gonzo. Because he played the game, and he played through it, and he liked it a lot. And so he invited us to Spain to some event that was happening there. And
is he still making games?
No, he's in the games industry. He's sort of this weird big figure in the Spanish games industry, also with a lot of controversy around him because he's sort of controlled. I don't know, like you hear,
right.
I don't know much about the Spanish games industry, but he's controversial there, I think.
Gotcha.
But we talked to him, and he said he liked the game. That was pretty awesome. So that was a cool moment after Shadow Tactics. Yeah.
Awesome. And another question. Sorry, I just had a...
Are you there?
Yeah. I just had a moment in wording this.
Has the moment passed?
I think it's still going, but give me this.
Oh, you're formulating the question. I understand now.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Meanwhile, Mo, who's your favorite rapper?
Ooh. Wow, I think Dipset are the crew. Dipset.
Okay.
I like them a lot.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay,
Andy's back, everybody. Andy.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I hope you can consider it fair for me to characterize your studio as firmly like in the AA space with your budget and the kind of games that you make. In many industries, with video games not being an exception, there's a trend toward going bigger and bigger studios swallowing smaller ones. Do you feel pressure to go bigger in the future, or do you feel like your situation is precarious, or are you quite comfortable with the kinds of budgets and games you're making, and you think that there's a healthy future for that size? And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
It's a good question. So we've it is something that we talk about a lot, I guess, because we make high quality games, but as you say, they're in AA space, and something that our founders, our creative director Dominic and Johannes, our CEO, they both they never valued growth for growth. Like they were never about making money with the company or anything like that. It was never about that. So it was always about how much growth do we need to make the next game that we want to make. Like we see in our last game, man, we need more people doing this. Like we need more guys and gals doing that. And then we try to hire as few people as we need, because we never let people go like after a project. Like as I said before, we have very, very little turnover in the company. And that is because we don't hire many people to get something done and then we fire them again. A, that's not so easy in Germany as it is in the US, and B, it's something we just don't want to do. We want people to be happy where they are. So we might, and Johannes has this thing where he would say, okay, now we're going to 15 for Shadow Tactics. That's going to be it. And then 3 years later, and now we're going to 25 for Süßkartoffel, but that's going to be it. And then we're now almost 40 for Süßkartoffel. And he realized that he's going to stop saying, well, we're not growing anymore, but we're not planning to go AAA. Like, I think there were chances for us to do that, or for them, and we talked about it, and we're happy with what we're doing. We like the creative control, we like the size. It's getting harder and harder with the size, especially if you're to know everybody on the team and to get everybody on the same page. And with 35 to 40 people, it's very different from how it was like when we were 6 people, and even 15. But we're right now at a point where if we get any bigger, it's going to be even more rough regarding that part. And it might happen. Maybe in a couple of games, we might go up to 100 people. Who knows? But then it's going to be because that's how it turned out, and not because we sort of business planned it in a way or said, we have to go AAA, or that's our dream. It never was. Our dream was to make the games we want to make, and we need the people for that we need.
Cool. Yeah, Fuby, that's the code name for their game. He speaks German, and he's like, why are you saying sweet potato? I guess
sorry.
I guess that's their code name. Now I'm kind of like, I got to guess, because it's like, okay, Germany's giving you some money, which means you're going to get, I'm going to go check on the internet and figure out the checklist, and then go, if I were to...
It has nothing, there's no way in that, like, they don't say... Like,
no, I know, but if you get points if you set it in Europe. Oh, okay, so it's a medieval game.
But it's also that could be a European person in the game. That could also get you that point.
God,
so it's very broad.
It could be Idris Elba game. I don't even fucking know what the fuck it is. All right. We did it, Mo. We got through it. I had a good time talking to you. I hope you had a good time talking to me. I hope we can go on another date. I'll take you to the Olive Garden, and I'll take you to see a movie picture show, but only at the cheap seats, because we don't know each other that well yet. I appreciate it. I appreciate your work, your whole team's work. Thank you so much. Desperados 3, man, classic fucking game. I hope you know what you built. It's hard to know. I mean, I've built games people love, and then you're just like, it's just work, man. I was doing what I do, and it means a lot. You loved it, but I don't think about it that way. But it was so great. Thank you for that. Thank your team for that, and thank you for the time you gave us today. I very much appreciate it, and I hope to talk to you soon in the future. I'll send send you a link to the keynote if you're interested about the Desperados stuff.
Yeah, do that, please.
I will.
That would be interesting.
Chat, stay on. I'm going to give you some information about what's happening tomorrow. All right, Mo, thank you so much. Mimimi Games, thank you guys so much. Looking forward to your next thing. See you guys.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Anytime, sir. Okay, so tomorrow, take him to the Olive Garden. I'm going to take him to the Olive Garden. You got the best restaurant in the world. He's like, dude, I'm from Europe. I get real fucking food. No, the Olive Garden, it's free breadsticks, man. It's free breadsticks. That's all you need. Listen, tomorrow, Dr. Kate Devlin is going to come on to the show. Fuck off, Bacon Magma. Tomorrow, Dr. Kate Devlin is coming on the show. She is an amazing author who, I mean, I'm not fucking with you guys. This is a hell of a conversation we're going to have. I just love the conversation I had with Mo, but listen to this. Listen to this goddamn thing. She is a doctor. She speaks. She's a lecturer at is it King's College in London, but her specialty is artificial intelligence, intimacy, and sex robots. She wrote a brilliant book called Turned On, which is all about, first off, it deals with past sex toys, about sort of the first sex robots, which weren't robots, but and it goes all the way up into what we'll be doing in the future when it comes to intimacy with actual fucking robots. So if you're into things like Ex Machina or the Gigolo Joe and the Gigolo Jane characters and AI, this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm very much looking forward to it. This is tomorrow, 10 a.m. Yes, Cooper, I am in the process of playing Deathloop right now. I like it a great deal. I'm not sure if I love it yet. I'm going to put some impressions up later on tomorrow or whatever, but I want to spend some more time with it. But I'm also playing Gas Station Simulator a lot. Like, that's taking more of my time because it's just such a relaxing, fun, interesting experience. So, but anyway, there you go. That's the stream. That's the chat. Maybe I probably won't stream tonight. I got to prep for tomorrow, but I will see you guys hopefully on tomorrow's interview with Dr. Kate or on a future stream or on a future video. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the calls. Thank you for the support. Thank you, Mimimi Games and good Sir Mo Wagner. And I will talk to you guys down the road. I'll see you guys. Bye, everyone.